everyone, welcome to Mitcham Hills Online. It's great to have you with us this morning. We've got Rand sharing with us today and he's going to be preaching from Psalm 25.
When we lived in Canberra for 8 years actually, and I finally got a promotion. I've been working towards it and was feeling really good about that. And also at the time I had this really great team I was working with, really good. And something you might like to know about me is I really like to have enjoyable relationships with my work colleagues. I like to have a joke with people, you know, come in the morning, happy Monday everybody. I still do this actually, although I ring people in Canberra and say it, happy Monday, happy Tuesday, happy, anyway. Now they say it back to me. And of course there's happy Fat Friday, which is, I eat a lot on Fridays. And I like my work colleagues to be, as much as possible, to be friends. And so things were going really fabulously well. And then all of a sudden I became aware that someone had stabbed me in the back to my boss. And so I had to answer some uncomfortable questions with my boss. And then after that, my boss lost faith in me. And he started to treat me quite badly, actually. And then some more of my colleagues started to stab me in the back, and I obviously lost their respect, and they were working against me. And then my staff started to act up, obviously influenced by all of these particular views that others were saying. So I was getting left out of important decisions. It was no longer included in meetings where I should have been included in them. I was being kept in the dark. Basically, I'd been dumped. I'd been dumped by my work friends. And now work was horrible. I felt marginalised, disliked, alone. I was depressed. You know, like that situation of mine, which you may have identified with, all of us can find ourselves in situations where our friends turn on us. They desert us. They betray us. They dump us. School kids are classic for this. You know, you're in a group. They're your group. You're an accepted part of the group. And then all of a sudden, you get dumped. What did I do? What did I do? Well, sometimes it might have been something you said or you did, but sometimes, well, you know, they just decided to dump you. Yeah, for no good reason. For no good reason. Or, you know, as verse 3 of the psalm that was read to us says, those who are treacherous without cause. And breakups are another classic example. You know, you and your partner have a great set of friends together, and then you break up, and then for some reason, they all take your partner's side, and all of those friends you thought you had, they're gone. There are a lot of these kinds of situations. Like me, some of you here may have experienced them. Some of you may be experiencing them right now. And some of you haven't experienced those things yet. Matter of time. When your friends turn on you, it's a really hard time. It's deeply hurtful. It's very difficult to navigate your way out of it. When friends turn on you, it's a really big thing because more than anybody else, you have such a strong connection to your friends. Their opinion matters to you. You know, if a stranger tells you you're being hard to get on with, well, yeah, so what? But if a friend says you're being hard to get on with, well, you'll take that to heart, you know? You find yourself asking yourself, am I really that hard to get on with? So when your friends, you know, the ones whose opinions matter to you and who you are deeply connected with, when they dump you, That's a huge impact on your life. Huge impact on your well-being. Now, you're alone, afflicted, and you have enemies. Enemies? Enemies, but I'm so easy to get on with. I'm a nice person. How could I have enemies? You have enemies. The person who you once laughed with about that other person, now they're laughing at you. And this is the situation that King David, the writer of Psalm 25, found himself in. We aren't told why his friends turned on him, but there are a lot of them, and they really hate him. And he feels their hate, and they want to make him suffer in shame. You know, in King David, it's likely because he made some kind of unpopular decision, and it was because he felt it was the right thing to do. And that's actually a reason why we do lose friends. I remember as a teenager, the group of friends I was in, they all started to take drugs. And so I thought, no, I don't want to do that. End of friendship. You might have a similar experience, I'm sure, where you choose to do what's right and then your friends turn against you. And so David is isolated, he feels lost, he feels deeply afflicted, distressed, and he's really depressed. What's he going to do? What would you do in this situation? If you fell out with somebody, you'd normally go to your mates and have a bit of a whinge about them. But when it's all of your mates that have turned on you, who can you go to? And what can you do about it? It's not as if you can just Google, what do I do when my friends dump me? Although, funny enough, the Psalms are actually a bit like this. Actually, I'm sure some people do Google what happens. But anyway, but the Psalms are a bit like that. The Psalms are poems or songs that are set to music. We don't actually have the music. We've got the words, we don't have the music. Probably wouldn't like the music really if we actually had it, but it's no coincidence that a lot of the songs we sing here at Mitcham Hills have words of the Psalms in them. But most importantly, the Psalms are a life guide. When you pick up a psalm and read it, you join with the writer of the psalm and you join with their struggle with a situation they found themselves in. And you join with them how they work that situation out with God's help. Every situation in life is represented in some form or another in the Psalms. And the Psalms train you for every possible spiritual, social and emotional condition. They show you what your attitude should be, how to talk to God about it, and how to get from God the help you need. So when we read Psalm 25, we not only see the situation that David's in, we not only feel his pain in the situation, but we're given a guide to work through it. How often do you find yourself in a situation where you just got no clue? What do I do? The Psalms should be our instant go-to. They give us a kind of a template that you can put over that situation that we find ourselves in, and we can follow that template to work through those situations with God. You don't have to work through, we don't have time to work through all of Psalm 25, but I'd like to highlight three standout features. Three standout features that we should think about when we get dumped by our friends. The first one is engage. Who do you go to? Second is trust. Who are you really trusting in? And the third is hope. Who are you really hoping in? Engage. Because our connection with friends are so deep, when they reject us, it's a really big thing. How do you handle it? Well, you could, how do you handle it? Well, you could crawl on your knees back to your friends, do anything for their reassurance. But that's compromising everything about you, and quite frankly, they'll still treat you as badly. Or you can deny it, just try to pretend it didn't happen, or you can withdraw from everything and suffer in silence. None of those work out very well. But what we see in Psalm 25 is that David engages with God. And when I say engage, it's not a light thing. It's not that quick text just to say how you're feeling. This is a stop everything and put your whole self to be with God. In verse 20, he says, I take refuge in you. I take refuge in you. If you're out hiking, I know I don't go hiking, Jack goes hiking, but if Jack was out hiking and he got caught in a rainstorm, you'd take shelter under a big tree or in a rock shelter, and you'd curl up inside there and embrace that place with all of your being, and you'd rest in the knowledge that you're safe from the storm. That's what you do with God when you're in trouble. And that's what you do when you've been dumped by your friends. You put all of you into the hands of God. And in that place of refuge, you can work through the situation with God's help. Looking at the psalm, engaging with God means you honestly pour out your heart to God, unload your frustrations and anger and disappointment and fear. We need to unload all of our feelings to God. Tell God about your pain and your disappointment and your fears. Engaging with God means earnest, ongoing prayer. We see David ask God to remember him, to forgive him, to turn to him, to be gracious to him, to guard him and rescue him, to keep him from shame. Sustaining prayer is not easy, but its reward is extraordinary. Engaging with God involves celebration. David celebrates the character of God. In verse 10 he says, all the ways of the Lord are loving and faithful. When we celebrate the character of God, we remind ourselves who it is that we've sought refuge in and who it is who loves us more than anyone else. And engaging with God involves waiting. Funny enough, looking hard at ourselves, making prayerful changes in our lives to be who God wants us to be. David's enemies, it says in the psalm, David's enemies are waiting. They can hardly wait to see what he does. And David's waiting too. He's not waiting to see what his enemies will do. He's waiting on God. He will emerge from his refuge in God when God has equipped him to do so. He is looking for an answer, a step to take, guidance on how to deal with being betrayed by those close to him. Waiting is such a rare commodity in a don't stop for a second world that we live in, but waiting on God is where real strength is grown and where real wisdom is found. Trust. The very first thing David says in the psalm is what? In you, Lord my God, I put my trust. Trust is a very practical thing. When we accord trust in someone or something, we're relying upon them to help us travel through life. To get from A to B each day, we put our trust in a range of things and people, and we withhold our trust from a range of things and people. You trust the brand of car that you own because it won't let you down. It'll get you from A to B. I get the G30 bus to the city every morning because mostly it gets me there on time. But I get the train home in the evening because the train never lets me down, and the G30 has failed me so many times. I think it was about the fifth time I said, no more, it's the train. So I don't trust it anymore. It still happens, still comes along Grove Street, I just don't catch it. We accord trust. We rely upon certain people and things to get us from one point to the next. When your friends turn against you, you've experienced a major breach in trust. You've been travelling along in life with all of these people, and now they've let you down. And like me, waiting at the bus stop for hours for the G30 to show up, you feel paralysed, not sure what step to take next. But who can I really trust? Who can I really rely upon to travel this life with? Now, in Psalm 25, we find a very well-considered approach to according trust. For instance, if you've got $30,000 and you want to spend that on your next car, and because that's a lot of money, you do all the research, you make a list of good points and bad points, and you compare which one of them is most likely of all those cars, which of them is going to let you down and which is not. And then at the moment of commitment, you hand over that $30,000 and drive out with your new car, confident that with all the reasons you've considered, you can safely put your trust in that car. David, bruised so badly by the rejection of his friends, states very clearly in the psalm why they can't be trusted. There's a list of bad things. And like that list for figuring out which is the best car to get, he gives an overwhelming list of reasons for why he is putting his trust in God above everyone else for travelling his life with. God is merciful and forgiving, even when we let him down, which is all the time. He is always good. He is upright and shows us how to live. To those who seek his way, he guides them and shows them the way they should go. He is loving and faithful. He guards you and rescues you. These are all from the psalm. He confides in you and we can be close to him. He is reliable and he's always there for us. There's no greater friend than God. He is our best friend because practically he's your best option from getting to A to B in this life. He, more than anything or anyone else, is worth investing everything in. And hope. After saying in verse 2 that he's putting his trust in God, and that he doesn't want to be put to shame, he actually answers the question straight away. In the next verse he says, "No one who hopes in you will ever be put to shame." You see, he can put his trust in God because he puts his hope in him. We trust things to get us from one thing to the next in a practical kind of way, but that thing you put your hope in, that's what gets you up in the morning. That's what keeps you going all day. That's what gets you up the next morning, and that's what keeps you going the next day. What you hope in is what you're living for. And what you're living for, well, that determines who you put your trust in. What you hope in is an ultimate thing. It's what you put above everything else. So what do you put your hope in? What do you put your hope in? You might even say, Rand, I don't know what I put my hope in. Well, it's actually a pretty easy question to answer. Ask yourself this: what or who do you spend most of your day thinking about? What or who makes you most happy, more than anything else? What or who do you go to when things go bad, when you're panicking? What or who gives you comfort? Where do you go for comfort? Whatever your answer to all of those questions is, well, that's your hope. Functionally, that's what you put your hope in. So what has hope got to do with when my friends dump me? Everything. Our friends and work colleagues play such a defining role in our lives. We have a sense of belonging with our friends, don't we? We enjoy the respect and the honour they give to us. We feel safe and accepted with them. all the time. So why do they play such a defining role in our lives? Because our hope is tied up in them. So much so that when those relationships get the jitters, when something happens, then fear and uncertainty creep in. Because our sense of belonging, our sense of respect from these people, our feeling of safety and acceptance, they're jolted. They're threatened when our relationships are threatened. That's why when you get dumped by your friends, if your hope has been strongly connected to them, then you've suddenly lost your sense of belonging, safety, respect. If you think about that example I gave right at the beginning, my hope was connected too much to climbing the corporate ladder, so that what my bosses and my colleagues thought about me played such an important role. They were inseparably linked to that hope. And so when they dumped me, I was devastated. My hope was gone. My hope was crushed. So if your friends are where your hope lies, or are linked to where your hope lies, like in my example, when they dumped you, your hope is crushed. In verse 21, David says something really interesting. May integrity and uprightness protect me, because my hope, Lord, is in you. When our sense of belonging is based upon our hope in God, when our sense of value, our integrity and uprightness, that comes from our hope in God, when our personal safety and acceptance is based on our hope in God, then we're protected from the judgment of the world. We're protected from the judgment of people around us, and certainly from what our friends think. And that's because if God is your hope, then what your friends think doesn't matter. If God is your hope, you won't be affected by what anyone thinks. King David was one of the most resilient and influential people in history. Why? His extraordinary resilience in the face of the most extraordinary challenges, challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge, was because his hope was in God. His hope was in God. When your hope is in God, it is His judgment about you that's all that matters. Only His judgment matters. And what does He think about you? You know, He loves you so much, He sent His Son. He sent His Son to die for you. We know how much He loves us. So we know we are fully accepted by the Father every day, all day. So when your friends dump you, head to Psalm 25 and work through that psalm with God. Engage with Him. Take refuge in Him. Pour out your hearts to God. Earnestly pray, celebrate Him, and wait for His guidance. Trust in Him more than anyone else. He deserves our total trust. There is no greater friend than God. And put your hope in Him. It won't matter what other people think. It just won't, because it's only what God thinks that counts. And His love for us is greater than any friends that we might know. Ironically, it's us who are the ones that dump God fairly regularly. Even those of us who say we love Him, we regularly dump Him in favour of the world. Yet He is faithful to us, even though we are not faithful to Him. God demonstrated His own love for us, in that while we were still sinners, He sent His Son to die for us. And so he made us friends in Christ with God. A friend who never dumps us, whose love for us does not diminish. Every day, he is always there for us.
Thanks so much for joining us today, everyone, and thank you, Ran, for bringing the word. Join us next week. We've got Craig bringing a message on infinity and beyond. See you then.